Hey everyone, welcome back to the BizBlend Podcast, the show where we keep it very real about business, leadership, and the human brain that has to survive all of it. Listeners, as always, I'm your host Sana, and today we are talking about something everyone is feeling, but then very few people are trained to handle pressure. Now, if you look at AI, it's changing roles fast. Markets are shaky. Then there's this whole fear that AI is going to take our jobs and all that. And a lot of us are quietly running on anxiety and caffeine. But listeners, my guest has a very different take on it. He believes that pressure is not the villain, it is actually the opportunity. If you know how to work with it, and let me share a bit about my guest with all of you. He has spent over 20 years on the front lines of business training, more than 20,000 hours in rooms with leaders and teams at the largest auto group on the planet. In that time, he has seen people crack and he has seen people become almost unshakable. And that experience led to his book, Turning Snowflakes to Diamonds, and his Becoming Diamond framework. He teaches people how to move out of what he calls snowflake patterns: reactivity, overwhelm, emotional collapse, and into a diamond operating system where you can stay calm, clear, and confident even when the pressure is real. So today he is going to share simple tools which you can use right away, things like the Swiss Army knife. Yeah, we will get down to it during the conversation. And then the art protocol, proximity prime, lot of interesting, but in a way that is applicable, that is doable in small steps. We're going to keep it practical, listeners, easy and very human. So, with that, listeners, meet my incredible guest, Michael T Dugan. So, Michael, welcome to BizBlend, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Oh, Sina, thank you so much. The honor is mine.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really love the parallels here, but before that, um, I don't know whether it's a coincidence or something else, but just before this conversation, I was having this another, discussion on with a guest on another one of our podcast about inner peace. And there, um, because anything is not just black and white, there are nuances here. So when it comes to inner peace, that there's this kind of a cultural thing that, oh, we need to be out of stress. Stress is really bad. We're all stressed out. But then there is something called as stress. Sometimes I think pressure or stress is necessary to keep us grounded and be aware that how we can balance it. Yeah, it can be difficult, it can be challenging initially, but I think there are multiple examples out there, journeys, people who have actually made it. So let's try to understand here, the experiences that you have had, Michael, the approaches, your book. So with that, let's start with the snowflake patterns here, Michael. Reactivity, overwhelm, and emotional collapse. So what is the origin story here? Like, how do you create the parallel?
Yeah, thank you. It was my child is a Gen Z child, and I started working on emotional mastery when I was 23 years old. And it's been a long path because I was identified with my emotion. Like sometimes people meet somebody that says, I have a bad temper or
Mm.
from this. And I knew as a young man that identity, I could either keep it or I could learn to rewire myself. And so I've spent years studying emotional patterning. And then I started understanding the identities, how we can become identified. And there's three groups of identities. There's the body identities, like I have to go to the bathroom or I'm tired. Then there's emotional identities, like I have anxiety or I have an anxiety problem. And I oftentimes say there's nothing wrong with emotions. Emotions are beautiful.
Mm.
They're the soundtrack to the human life. But if we're over identified with an emotion, it can be a problem. And then we have learned identities. Maybe it's a political identity or religious or spiritual or atheist identity, or you like a food or you like a hobby or a habit. So these identities form the ego's personality, is the way I would say it. So when I had my child, my Gen Z child, I watched her identities when she was
Yeah.
young, and I watched her identities form so that I could tell her identities, but then this is the first generation, Gen Z is the first generation to grow up completely on technology, and so they're wired differently than we are. They're more intelligent with knowledge and maybe less wisdom, though. They don't necessarily have the wisdom of the full integration and a different type of integration. And I look at it like it's perfect, and so then I would see these children, and they would have, like, these identities, issue after issue after issue. I look at everything, Sina, like it's a bell curve. You can have the most positive person or the most negative person or the richest or the poorest or the most conscious or the least conscious, and one's not better than the other, it just is, it's equal. So it's about giving love to everybody, and for me, I side with love. But then I saw some people call the Gen Z generation in the US the snowflake generation, but some people call it older people. And I don't mean it as a derogatory term because then I say I'm a snowflake too, because I grew up in a completely easy life. Whatever was hard for me, I've gone through divorce, I've gone through death, I've gone through, sickness, illness, I've gone through financial stuff. But still, I've had a fantastic life compared to some people in some other countries. And the point is that we're going through a metaphor birth on the planet right now. With AI being formed, every country wants it, every company wants it, with whatever your beliefs are with the globe, with the fracturing of the planet, that the snowflake is going to melt. And I grew up in Alaska. I'm in Florida now, but in Alaska, they had snowflakes, and snowflakes are all different. They're all beautiful. There's nothing wrong with them, but there can be a fragility about them. And there's a famous saying that's good times makes weak people, and weak people make bad times. And bad times make strong people, and strong people make good times. And then I put my spin on it. Good times make snowflakes, and snowflakes make bad times. And bad times makes diamonds, and diamonds make good times. So it's the time for humans to become more conscious, and with consciousness comes capabilities.
That's brilliantly put, Michael. Brilliantly. Um, some golden nuggets, listeners. First thing, Michael, I really loved, how you said that emotions are soundtrack of our life. That is such a beautiful, poetic way. Secondly, when you mentioned about knowledge and wisdom, something that really made me kind of nostalgic because my father always tells me that there is a huge difference between knowledge and wisdom. Many people kind of do not know the exact difference, but knowledge is something that, school, information, facts, something you read in your textbooks, or, all the technical stuff and everything. But then I think wisdom is something that at least I've encountered in very few people that I've come across. So I think, that really made me nostalgic. And this is such a beautiful, beautiful parallel that, we can say. And one fact that I think, which I can make out is, um, although these two worlds are absolutely different, but then I think whether it's in business or in entrepreneurship, we can actually seek inspiration from nature. In fact, I've had conversations with guests, where they draw this beautiful parallels between parenting and business, or being a founder, being the CEO. So I think all of these words, they're so much intricately connected with each other. So that is brilliantly put, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. Okay, now let's get on to the diamond operating system. So if Michael, snowflake patterns, they are the old operating system, what exactly is diamond operating system?
Yeah, thank you. It's a bit detailed. As I
Mhm.
through my life, I've developed frameworks, and when I say I've been a student. I came up with a saying. There's oftentimes people say the same thing over and over, and they repackage it. And one saying is learn from the best and leave the rest, or success leaves clues. But I call it 360-degree learning, where you want to learn from everybody all the time. And and so life will teach you, like you were just saying, nature, and what you said was beautiful also, Sina. But what nature will teach us just as much as a podcast will. Do we have the ears and to hear, or the eyes to see, or to feel what's being taught to us by nature? And human beings have a baseline frequency. I look at it like a vibe, like a level of awareness is consciousness. And I would say vibe is the same as awareness, or frequency is the same as awareness. So I use all of those words interchangeable: vibe, frequency, awareness, consciousness. And they say awareness is the first key to change, or you could say consciousness is the first key to change, or frequency is the first key to change. And one thing I say to people, I do spins on sayings, and almost all the audience listeners have probably heard, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I spin that: when the frequency's ready, the frequency will appear. And if you don't change your baseline, you're not going to change, you're not going to evolve. So the diamond operating system is to help human beings rewire their baseline through increased awareness and consciousness, through a series of frameworks that I've developed, some used and I've repackaged, some that are very unique to what I've taught as we go through life. And the frameworks are, of course, are in the book, but I'd be happy to share anything about them that you would like. Well, the first one, for years, I would talk about the 3 Bs, which are simply the body, breath, and brain, but I turned it into the Swiss Army knife. And the Swiss Army knife, I saw a movie with my mom, bless her heart. She's been gone since 2016, but she was my best friend. And it was a
Mhm.
movie with an actor in the US named James Franco. A and it wa and what it was called 127 Hours, where he was, like,
Mm.
on a little BMX bike, and he fell into a ravine, and a rock fell, and it caught his arm in the ravine. And when it caught his arm in the ravine, what happened is he had to survive for 127 hours, and he had to cut off his own arm. And at one point, he's talking to a camera to his mother, and he's holding up the Swiss Army knife, and he says, "Mom, next time you get me a Swiss Army knife, can you get me an authentic one, not a knockoff, because the blade's not sharp enough?"
Mm.
And so I saw that movie with my mom, and then my mom for Christmas gave me a Swiss Army knife, and I have one next to me. And so the 3 Bs are now the Swiss Army knife, which is the body, breath, and blade. I mean, and brain, but the body can be used to attain consciousness and stay present and ground yourself, but it can also be used to change your emotions. Simultaneously, the breath can be used to attain presence, or it can be
Mm.
used to change your emotional state, such as with anxiety, breathe low and slow, or the
Mm.
brain having the ability to run consciousness within the brain. And I teach consciousness to people about how a lot of human beings are automated, and because there's the huge need for certainty. So they drive to work the same way because they want certainty. They go to the same restaurant because they want certainty. They eat the same food because they want certainty, and certainty means safety to the ego. The ego,
Mm.
the ego's job is to protect us. And there's a saying I teach: how you do anything is how you do everything. I learned it from a man named Lester Levinson in the 50s. How you do anything is how you do everything, unless you decide to change. Unless you decide to change. And a lot of people are automated and they don't even know it. They're doing it's like there's a famous movie from probably 30 years ago in the US named Groundhog's Day, where an actor,
Yeah.
Bill Murray, repeated the same day over and over. But every day he changed it a little bit until he ended up figuring out, the puzzle of the reoccurring pattern. And most people's lives are reoccurring patterns. There's a saying I learned from a hypnotist many years ago. life will keep on giving you lessons until you learn them. And if you don't learn them, life will keep on giving you the same lesson until you do learn it, until it gets painful enough that you finally recognize the only thing consistent with this reoccurring pattern is you, and that you are actually the problem. And that's where
Mm.
pain is the great persuader. And so I teach people about the boss identity. And it's about the boss identity is your consciousness. So I look at it like there's your soul in there and
Mm.
your energy in there and your ego's in there. There's two of you in there. And the one that makes the higher decisions is the ego. So I tell people in the classes that I teach, I would say, do you have to make yourself breathe or do you breathe on your own? And they'd say, we breathe on our own. And I'd say, do you have to make your heart beat or does it beat on its own? And they'd say it beats on its own. And I'd say, do you have to make your digestive juices secrete or do they secrete on their own? And they'd say secrete on their own. I said, do you have to make yourself think or do you think on your own? And they say, I think on my own. I'd have to make myself think. It automates. And I said, that's the autonomic nervous system. Now, technically,
Mm.
first three are the brain isn't, but the brain does automate because automation is a survival skill that we have that's allowed us to survive this long. So automation is not a bad thing. It's just a thing that some people are not aware when they're automated. And then I tell them to breathe in and out slowly once. And this would be the breath. And I'd say,
Mm.
control your breath. And almost nobody's ever answered what I'm looking for. They'd say, me, my brain. I'd say, no, that was your consciousness. And I say, now sit upright and give me your best fake smile. So they'll sit upright and they'll give me their fake smile. I say, what controls your body language? And they'd go, my consciousness. And then I would say to them, okay, now think about a thought that makes you feel happy. And they would. I'd say, what controlled your thoughts? And they'd say, my consciousness. And then I'd say, you want to make your consciousness the boss. And I have this training style called suggestology. I'd say, you want to make your training style the what? And they go, the boss. And then I go, who's the boss? And they wouldn't know what to say. And then I'd say, I'm the boss. And I'd say, who's the boss? Say that with me. And they'd say, I'm the boss. Then I'd say, who's the boss? I'm the boss. So the boss identity represents your consciousness. And that's where going back to when I said awareness and frequency and vibration and consciousness. And awareness is the first key to change, and consciousness is the first key to change. So when we're conscious in today's world with AI, it's going to give us capabilities and a higher level of wisdom to survive in this world we have going on today.
Wow. I mean, that is really, really. I mean, it actually kind of, is actually pushing me to get into that self-introspective mode, to be honest, Michael. Yeah, because I'll be also admitting that yes, many a times I am also in that automated mode. And I think it is fine because I think it's a natural way of our body, our brain to kind of keep us safe, as you explained.
Yes, no, it's very, very normal, and it's a survival skill. I give the people the example of, say it was 1,000 years ago, and if I'm trying to sharpen a spear to feed my family, I could die. But if I can sharpen the spear automatically, I can keep my awareness open so that I
Mm.
survive to feed my family. And but the problem is automation is the way we work. Most people don't understand how the human biological organism works or the species, and we have species specific traits. So if you're not aware of how you work, you're at a disadvantage. So like you said, I've been training corporately for 20 years with over 20,000 hours, and I'll ask audiences, what's your brain's primary purpose? And only maybe 1 or 2% of them over the 20 years will say it's to protect you or for survival. And that's the
Mm.
reason that that's not taught in the school system to everybody today. Now, because of the internet, more people are understanding that, but the
Mm.
ego's job is to keep us alive. And so the ego's job is to protect us. And the ego will oftentimes take the path of least resistance, which is automation. The ego will go into automation because it brings us certainty and safety, but you'll never truly feel alive unless you come out of your comfort zone, unless you live in the uncertainty and learn to embrace the uncertainty. And that's one of the messages that this book is bringing. I give
Mm.
the three musts in the book, three must. And must is an intense word, it's an absolute. And you must be valuable, listeners. If you're listening to this, you must be valuable and you must be adaptable. So you want to understand how your ego is going to be resistant to change, but change is happening at an unprecedented rate to us on this planet as a species, and you have to fit in socially. We're a social species and we connect and we like people that we can love and trust. And so these are the three musts in today's world, I believe, that will keep you relevant as long as possible or adaptable if you need to pivot in your life and make a shift.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And let's take an example here, Michael. Let's say, and this is something I've also found. I mean, I cannot even count something really, really stressful. Let's say if I'm going to have a client meeting tomorrow or a tough conversation, which is kind of a battle within, my between my mind and my heart. My heart says, um, you know, uh, just go and get it done. You need to get this done. Then my mind at the same time says that no, no, no. There are so many ramifications here. There are consequences here. What will you do? And then all that goes into the rabbit hole. Or let's say there's a performance review. Um, Thoughts all over the place. So, how would I use the Swiss Army knife that you explained, like the body, breath, and brain in, let's say, those 60 to 90 seconds before I walk into it.
Yeah, just a great example you gave, Senna. And the first thing is the body is 100% tied to the psychology. So even though it's kind of simplistic, stand strong, be strong. And even the power pose that they teach, Amy Cuddy in her book Presence teaches it or does a TED talk where you put your
Mhm,
hands on your hips. And after 20 minutes, I mean, 2 minutes, you'll have 20% more testosterone. Or even you have to be aware of your social setting. But if you're in the proper social setting where you could put your hands over your head, that's called a gravity-defying gesture that makes you happier. And then even
mhm,
put a smile on your face because even a fake smile, there's a book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell that even a fake smile still generates the endorphins and the happiness center in the brain. So first you change your body language as you walk into it, and this requires consciousness. The next thing you can do is you can do either box breathing, which Navy SEALs use so that they can stay sharp and focused in chaotic situations, or you could use heart focused breathing. From the Heart Math Institute. I got trained in heart as a heart math certified trainer years ago. And I
mhm,
think that's both of them are super effective and I use both of them daily. And the box breathing is where you breathe in for it. The amount of seconds doesn't matter. It could be 4 seconds or 5 seconds, but you could breathe in for 4 seconds and then hold it for 4 seconds and then out for 4 seconds, then hold it 4 seconds. And that would be one box. And maybe do 3 boxes or so while you're
mhm,
standing strong. Or hard focus breathing is where you use your imagination. Now, Einstein said imagination was more powerful than knowledge. So you'd use
mhm,
your imagination and breathe into your heart like a vacuum, and then you breathe out of your heart, and you'd think about somebody you love. Now this brings in the brain. Now this is where you can focus on. Years ago, I coined them badass moments. And these BAM is the acronym for badass moments. And these are these moments in your life that feel, when you think about them, you feel empowered. And these are evidence that you are successful and that you're going to make it through this just fine. And so then you hold on to, you find 2 or 3 badass moments in your life that are your go tos. And you could go ahead once again, stand strong, be strong. And then I would box breathe or hard focus breathe and I'd think about these badass moments. And then I would go in there with love. I'd go in there to serve and I'd go in there with kindness. And I recognize and I would hold the thought that nobody's better than you and nobody's worse than you. I'm a sales trainer. And so in sales, you have to teach confidence. And one of the things I teach in the book, and I got it from a guy named Chase Hughes, but for years I would teach confidence and to be the most comfortable person in the room. And if I'm
mhm,
looking at you like you're superior to me, it's gonna change the way I communicate with you. And if I look at you like you're less than me, it might change the way that I communicate with you. And what I tell people is that the ego judges and the ego creates separation, but the consciousness understands. The consciousness is constantly understanding different perspectives, spinning their perspective to look at it from the other person's perspective. So when you can look at people from this perspective of equality, when you go into your meeting, they're going to feel that. They're gonna, and you could have the I'm the boss identity, or you could walk in there like I'm a movie star identity, or I'm a professional spy identity. And these identities are these personas that we take for certain social situations.
Wow. And also, there's this one more technique that, especially when it comes to public speaking, like, just imagine everyone is naked and just go on. Because I think public speaking also one of the most kind of, people find it very challenging. Um, and maybe especially, for the first timers. But I think uh, these are some techniques, for the lack of better word, that I can say that I think that really, really helps us in navigating the high pressure situations. I mean, it's not possible that, we completely avoid pressure here. Going back to the first part of the conversation that we started with. So, yeah, that makes sense. That really makes sense, Michael.
Yes, yes, and that's what makes a diamond is pressure. So what we're doing is we're reframing pressure that it actually helps us grow, and we're learning to love into the unknown and love the pressure and know the pressure is gonna make our greatest self. And one thing that I've found in my life that I believe to be true is that you're gonna always get challenges, and every challenge is an opportunity for me to develop another facet in my diamond. There's not going to be any stopping of the challenges. You just get better at facing bigger challenges, and it's all about experiencing life to its fullest. And one of the frameworks I have in the book is ACE life, but life is for love life and learning to love all of it and learning to love the most challenging experiences equally to the ones that are easy to love and then integrate with it. The more we can integrate with life, this goes back to the conversation about Gen Z with knowledge versus wisdom. We want to get much wisdom as we can. So we integrate with it. And the more you love it, you integrate, then you want to learn to go with the flow, the ebbs and flow, and you want to be able to go in the flow with life. Otherwise, you have resistance. And what you resist persists, or a person that gets triggered a lot has a lot of resistance. A person that doesn't get triggered has a high level of acceptance. And then you want to constantly evolve ourselves. So the pressure evolves us. The pressure is what makes us a diamond, and the pressure is what's going to allow you listeners to stand out. When I said earlier, the saying that I learned from Lester Levinson from 1950s, how you do anything is how you do everything. But I added in the addendum, how you do anything is how you do everything unless you decide to change. But there's a second addendum, how you do anything is how you do everything, and everything matters. Everything matters. So I tell people in sales, does your breath matter? And they say yes. And I say, does your hair matter? And they say yes. Does your mood matter? And they say yes. Yeah, everything is a variable that's moving you in a direction. And this is the same thing for the listeners. When you look at your variables and you know where you want to go in your life, you want to stack variables that increase the likelihood of you attaining what you want to attain in your life. But then I say to them, but you know what matters the most? I say to them, you matter. And then I say, "Who matters?" And they say, "I matter." And I say, "I matter." Say that with me. I matter. Say it again. I matter. And I'm telling you, you matter than your more than your breath, more than your dress, more than anything else. What matters is you matter. And you have to give yourself permission to matter, permission to be great, to be great. If you don't give yourself permission to be consequential, through default, you're going to be inconsequential. And I tell people, is it possible that you are more powerful than you've ever given yourself permission to consider? And they all give it to me 100%. They say, yes, it is possible. And I say, well, give yourself permission to consider that. I'm telling anybody that may be listening to this, you are more powerful than you've ever imagined. I'm telling you, almost tears to my eyes. I'm just letting you know that I believe that that's true. And I have conviction in my voice, and that's certainty, that's belief that you are more powerful than you've ever imagined, and you matter, and you make a difference, and you make a difference to a lot of people. And don't underestimate how powerful you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant. Brilliant. Michael, I wish we could go on and on and on, but let's give our listeners, the rest to explore. So if they would like to reach out to you, if they would like to seek more wisdom into this, what would be the best way to do that? Best way to connect?
They could get the book that's on Amazon and on Audible called Turning Snowflakes into Diamonds. They could also find me on different social media platforms on Facebook, Turning Snowflakes to Diamonds, or Instagram or TikTok. And they could also go to the website that becomingdiamonds.com. And becomingdiamonds.com, in the book, I have a 30-day diamond sprint and a diamond manifesto. And I'm redoing the diamond sprint as we speak, but it's up and it's going to be up and running. It's up right now. They can go there and they could do the free 30-day diamond sprint. Whatever I can do to serve and help, I would love to be able to help the people on their path.
Super, super. So, listeners, to make it easier for you, I'll have all the links in the show notes. So, do check out Michael's book, Turning Snowflakes to Diamonds. Check out his 30-day sprint in there. And if I can, summarize this, because there's a whole lot of here, but then something that I really want to convey to all of you listeners, that you are not fragile by nature. You're just running patterns that were never updated. Snowflake patterns are not your identity, they're just habits under pressure. You now have language, snowflake patterns, diamond operating system. You have simple tools, body, breath, brain. So pick one, try it out, start small, treat it like an experiment, not perfection, but just curiosity. So, Michael, thank you for this super, super amazing, really, really full of wisdom conversation. A lot of golden nuggets. So, thank you. This was really, really much needed.
Sina, it was an absolute honor. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. And thank you to all the listeners for tuning to this episode of the BizBlend. Take this as a permission. This is your first step. And take one deep breath for yourself right now, because you earned it. And this is your host, Senna. This is BizBlend, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you.